Welcome to your reading. This is a picture of your chart. And the first thing that we look at in evolutionary astrology is the placement of Pluto in the chart, because Pluto describes the unconscious desire that brought the soul into its incarnation or into its existence. So your Pluto is here, and it's in the 5th house, which is the energy or the archetype of Leo. And Pluto in the 5th house souls have the desire to be seen and recognized for their uniqueness, what makes them special, any gifts and talents that they might have. Now, the next thing we want to look at is Mars, because if Pluto is the unconscious, then Mars is the more conscious expression of what is unconscious. And you can see your Mars right here is in the same placement as your Pluto. So that means that, this desire to be seen and recognized might be more conscious for you than it would be for somebody else who has Mars in a different placement. So you might be able to see right away that this is the basis of your life and, the experiences that you've had in your life and the circumstances. Because everything emanates from desire, even in some different, spiritual teachings and religions, they teach that it's this desire to separate from Source or God that brings us into existence, keeps bringing us back into incarnations to keep reincarnating. So Pluto is the bottom line, the unconscious desire, and then all the other placements of the planets in the birth chart are caused by this unconscious desire. So your Mars placement, your Sun placement, your Venus placement, all the placements of your other planets are there to fulfill this unconscious desire to be seen and recognized. And then I looked at the phase of your Mars and Pluto, and it's in balsamic phase, which means that you've been working with this energy of Leo for many, many lifetimes. There's typically 8 primary lifetimes where we work with a single energy, and then, any subsidiary lifetimes in between. But when we see Pluto and Mars this close together in this phase here, we can tell that this could be your last lifetime, this one, or maybe even the next one, or maybe even just a couple more, but you're almost done working with this desire. And then, after you've fulfilled the things that you want to learn about, this human existence through having this desire, then you'll move on to a different one. So that's comforting to some people, especially if they're having a really hard time. They're like, when am I going to get out of this, this energy that I've been working with and these things that I've been having to experience that can be painful around Pluto. Because Pluto it's the compulsion. I guess it's kind of like an internal war. So there's the need to change, the need to grow and evolve. That's one need of Pluto, because Pluto is about compulsion and destruction and, doing away with what's old and no longer serving us. And then the other need of Pluto is security, which comes from things remaining constant and static. So these things, these two things are diametrically opposed. And that's why there's always resistance to change, because we want to feel secure. We want to keep experiencing the things that we've known, whether those things are good or bad, whether they're helping us or hurting us, because at least, even if they're bad things, at least we know what to expect. But to have to go forward into a brand new energy, to grow out of old energies and into brand new ones that we don't have any experience of whatsoever, that's really scary. And it really forces us to lose our sense of security. And in evolutionary astrology, that's what it's all about. It's about looking at the energies that are really foreign to you, that you don't have any experience of. And these are the energies that you're asked to learn how to integrate and experience in the current lifetime. And a lot of times, the painful experiences that we have in our life, the traumatic experiences we have, are to force us out of what we know and what's comfortable, out of these old energies that aren't serving us any longer because we've been utilizing them for so many lifetimes. So when we look at how the person is asked to grow, Pluto is the bottom line, like I said. But there's a more immediate growth. Like Pluto's like, let's see, how can I explain this? So there's growth through the nodes. So you have your south node here, which is the old ways of relating to oneself internally, that sense of who you are inside that you've carried forward from a past life into this life. And this sense of who you are is going to change and evolve as you have those life experiences, some of which might be painful. And the way you do that is you go to the opposite energy on your chart here, to your north node energy, which is here. So when I see somebody who has south node in Scorpio in the 5th house like you do, I'm thinking, okay, well, why would a soul choose to have this sense of identity based on its unconscious desire? Which in your case, why would you have the Scorpio sense of self? And Scorpio has to do with a lot of different things. So as you're listening to this, you can think about which of these apply to you, and then whichever one resonates is going to be the one that's true for you. Usually Scorpio, they have experiences, even as a child, of feeling like they're bad for some reason. People, it's like the black sheep of the family syndrome, where they're labeled as bad as kids. A lot of times people treat them very badly. They can be abused. And a lot of people who have Scorpio South Node are psychic. They can have really strong ties to the other side and really great gifts and abilities. Another thing that it can represent is issues of power or powerlessness, because Scorpio has to do with merging deeply with another person, belief, or concept to try and, I guess, find one sense of power through that other person, belief, or concept. So these are all Scorpio themes, and this, another thing that it has to do with is like secrecy. The Scorpio person doesn't really trust other people because they have been treated badly. Scorpio also likes to delve deeply into matters. And then there's a whole psychology behind Scorpio, which is really fascinating. And I'll see if I can send you over something on that, but it's a really complex energy, and the reason that Scorpio often attracts, these negative people and experiences into its life is because it has this sense of this need to, I guess, abase the self. This need for self-destruction, and it's not a negative thing. It's psychologically and developmentally relevant to the process and the function of this energy. But, if the Scorpio person can't attract these negative experiences that, lead to darkness and self-destruction from the outside, then it will do that from the inside. So a lot of times there'll be addictions, self-harm, these type of things. So one of the things that I just mentioned that has to do with Scorpio should be relevant to you. If it's not, please message me and we can talk, about different options or maybe different meanings for you. And also the Scorpio South Node is heavily dependent on other people. So, they want to merge deeply with others. Their feelings are very sensitive. A lot of times they feel like they can't make it on their own, like they need other people so much that they'll have, experiences of loss, abandonment, or betrayal or abuse. Those are other Scorpio themes. So maybe a parent dies at a young age, that's an extreme loss. Maybe their husband leaves them when they need them the most, or their wife, abandonment. Maybe their partner cheats on them, betrayal. Maybe they're physically or sexually abused as a child, abuse. And the reason that the Scorpio ego attracts these type of experiences is because they need to learn to grow and evolve away from the need to be so dependent on other people. And that can be seen in the energy that's directly across the chart, the polar opposite energy, which is the North Node energy of Taurus here, because Taurus deals with self-reliance and finding power from within oneself versus finding it, or trying to find it from an outside source, and in that way, like osmosing power from another person or thing. So this will be the first step in your growth process during your life. And these themes that I was just talking about, going from independence to self-reliance, maybe through one of those scorpionic experiences of loss, abandonment, betrayal, or abuse. This theme would have been coming up strongly for you around the age of 18 or 19 during your first nodal return. So if you can think back to that time, think about what was happening in your life, and then think about this energy axis going from, past Scorpio and how you were being asked to grow towards Taurus to become more self-reliant, more self-contained, find your sense of power from within yourself. It can also do with resources. So Scorpio is about shared resources, and Taurus is about being more, I guess, monetarily or materialistically secure by yourself and for yourself. So think back to 18, 19 years old and think about what was happening in your life at that time. And then we not only want to look at the signs of your nodes, but we want to look at the houses too. And in evolutionary astrology, houses aren't really looked at in the way that they are in traditional astrology as areas of life. They're more looked at as energies. So you have South Node in the 5th house here, which again is the energy of Leo. And with a South Node in Leo, the energy of Leo, you're going to be somebody who, your sense of self is going to be really fragile. The ego is very fragile because Leo is the life stage of the teenager where, the opinions of our peers can make or break how we view ourselves. If we get negative feedback from our peers when we're teenagers, we think, oh, I'm just garbage and I must be whatever, fill in the blank, ugly, stupid, all those things that teenagers label other teenagers as. So with this, South Node Leo energy coupled with the South Node Scorpio, I can just imagine. I mean, I don't know what your personal experiences were, but there's a whole list of possible configurations and meanings. But I do know that, as a child and even now, you probably have this sense where I don't know what the right word to use is here. I guess where your sense of self is, and I say sense of self because the moon is, it's our internal sense of who we are at the ego identity level. Like I said, it's probably very, very fragile. And then with Scorpio, if you did have those bad experiences, it can just be somebody who was really broken down by other people. And then when we look to the opposite energy of the 5th, we go to the 11th, to your North Node house placement, and that's 11th is the energy of Aquarius. So when you go from somebody who has these past life, childhood, current life, Leo energy, they're going to have experiences that are teaching them how to let go of that, how to let go of the need to feel special, the need to be recognized, in a positive manner. The need to rely so heavily on other people's opinions and then let that be the basis of how you view yourself, because the life stage of Aquarius is the retired person. And if you think about, somebody who's 60, 70, however many years old, they've already lived their life and they know who they are and they're very authentic. And a lot of times they're not afraid to let people see who they really are because they've figured it out. They've already done the high school and the kids and the marriage and all that other stuff. And now they're free, in retirement, you're free to do what you want and be who you want. So if we look at that life stage, that's how you're being asked to grow through your life experiences, is from somebody who has this very fragile sense of self that's heavily dependent on other people's opinions, to somebody who's I guess cares less about what other people have to say and has a more secure sense of self. And if you think about that word that I just used, secure, Taurus is all about security. It's that security that comes from within versus from without. So if I could say anything about this axis as an overall theme, from your south node here to your north node up here, I would say that it's about, this past of just enmeshment, unhealthy enmeshment with other people, to this sense of standing on one's own 2 feet, standing one's ground, knowing your true power independent of any other person or thing. Now, let's see, I wrote down some dates for you. Your second nodal return will be happening January 19th, 2022, so 2 years from now, through July 17th, 2023. And these dates are going to be super important for you because 2 years from now, you're going to be working directly with these energies all over again. So every 18 years, at age 18 and then again at age 36, 37, the nodes of the moon in the heavens are the same as the nodes of the moon in our birth chart. So the energies in the sky are the exact same as the energies that you were born with every 18 years. And it's every 18 years that we get to have an intensification of these energies so that we can learn to grow, little by little every 18 years over the course of our lifetime away from the old energies and grow into the new person that we're meant to become as represented by the North Node placement in our chart. So in about 2 years from now, it would be really helpful for you to pay attention to what's coming up for you emotionally and do a journal, because these themes are going to be coming up super strong. The Scorpionic versus the Taurus and the Leo versus the Aquarius. And there are 2 dates within your nodal return. Those are the dates of the lunar eclipses, and on these 2 dates, you can get a super clear picture of how you're being asked to grow and actually how you're growing at this time, because if you have the nodal return, that's already, an amplification of the energies, but then you throw an eclipse on top of that, and it's like, you can't really get away from it. I mean, it's super powerful. So those dates are May 16th of 2022 and November 8th of 2022. So a few days before to a few days after those 2 dates, you should be feeling these Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius themes coming up for you super strong. Okay, so that's the more I guess short-term, more conscious growth. Let's see, where do I want to go from here? Okay, I'm gonna do a little diversion here, and I want to talk about this configuration over here. So you have Pluto conjunct the south node, and conjunct just means within 10 degrees, on either side of the planet. So your south node is about 1 or 2 degrees from Pluto, and your Mars is about 3 or 4 degrees from Pluto. So you have both of those conjunct Pluto, and when we see Pluto conjunct any of the nodes, we're looking at the most powerful signature of karmic repetition in any birth chart that you can find. So this is talking about reliving the karmic past, which is what you're doing in this lifetime. And the way that this happens is that there's certain gifts and abilities or blockages and restrictions from your past life that you've carried forward to this life to be worked through. It can be one or the other. It can be gifts and abilities from past life that you're bringing forward into this life to help serve others with. Or it can be just solely blockages and restrictions. Or it can be, more commonly a combination of those two things happening. So a question that you might want to ask yourself is, do you feel that you're bringing gifts and abilities with you that you're compelled to share in this life, or do you feel blocked or restricted in expressing the gifts and talents that you do have? Because that's what it's showing here in your chart. Another thing that happens when you have Pluto conjunct the nodes is the reliving of the karma, that karmic bondage that we all carry from our past life into this one can't be broken or undone until your second Saturn return, which happens between the ages of 56 and 60. Now, there are some extenuating circumstances where this can, be mitigated, this effect. So, for example, if you have, a significant transit of Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune during this lifetime, then it might happen that you're able to break your karmic bonds and ties sooner than your second Saturn return. Because for most people, their first Saturn return is when, is the crucial time of rebirth from the karmic dictates of the past, which is, late 20s, early 30s. That's for people who don't have Pluto conjunct the nodes. But you do, so that means for you, because you're bringing all this past life karma into your present life, it's going to take a little bit longer, and that's fine. This is your process, this is your journey, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So that's something to keep in mind over the years. If you do have any gifts and abilities, and you feel restricted by them, or, you feel compelled to be of service maybe when you don't really want to, that's a karmic pattern that might not be able to be broken until, your late 50s. And then on the flip side, if you feel restricted or blocked in any way, again, it might take until later in life for you to undo that karma. Now, there's another thing that we want to look at, because you also have Mars conjunct the South Node. And when we have Mars conjunct the South Node, it's kind of the same thing, where we're living some karmic element from our past life. And we look at Mars, and Mars is the will and instinct. So for you, this tells me that there was some aspect of your will or your instinct that was developed and or blocked in your past life, and that your dilemmas and or your gifts related to your will and instinct were brought forward from your past life. And again, Mars is in these same energies of Scorpio and Leo, Leo 5th house. So, that's something else for you to think about. What can you think about your will or your instinct that that seems to be maybe blocked, or maybe you have a very strong will. You've developed your will to a high degree in your past life, and you're bringing that forward now to share that strong will with other people. So that whole, past life stellium there is very interesting, and it's something for you to contemplate. And I think a lot of times people, when they get these readings done, they kind of listen to it. They might absorb what's revealed into their subconscious, but they don't really go back. I would go back annually and view this video and just think about, how have I changed and how have I grown since I last watched this video? Because growth and evolution is a lifelong process. It doesn't, it's not something to just have intellectual awareness of, and they're like, oh, okay, well, this is it. I guess I'm just going to move on to my next little tidbit of information now. If you're somebody who's really interested in knowing why your life's turned out as it has, and why all the future experiences that you're going to have happened, which I think you are that kind of person with a South Node in Scorpio, because Scorpio is very investigative and they like to get down to the nitty-gritty, and they're very good detectives, and they like to know the deeper meaning of things. So that's something that I would highly encourage you to do. And then also maybe mark on a future calendar the dates that I've talked about in this video, because if you, 2 years from now, if things are going to hell and you're like, why the hell is my life so messed up? Then you go back to this video and you say, oh, okay, that's why, because I'm being asked to become more self-reliant or more self-contained. And inevitably, that's what you're going to find, is that the experiences that you're having are all driving you towards this future sense of self that is so radically different from, who you were maybe even 2 years ago, and then 2 years from now, so radically different from who you are today. Okay, another thing that I looked at was your Venus placement. Let me circle that for you so you know where it's at. Okay, so this is Venus here, and it's in the sign of Sagittarius in the 6th house. And Venus is what we perceive to be the meaning of life. So every energy of every planet, the planet is the function. So Venus is, what meaning am I giving to life in general? And then the energy is the filter of that function. So the meaning that you ascribe to life is philosophical or spiritual in nature. And I have this same Venus placement, to me, and I have so much Sag energy, it's insane. But the meaning that I give to life, everything is filtered through that sense of, okay, what does this have to do about the great mysteries of life, the philosophical side of a person, as well as spiritual, what does, for example, if I see, a scrub jay squawking at me through my window, I'm somebody who has Sag Venus, so I'm going to be thinking, well, what is the spiritual significance of this event? Whereas somebody who has a different energy in Venus might, be asking a totally different question. And it's not that one filter of this function of human existence is right or better. It's just about the life that that we desired to live and to experience reality through. And then Mars, I think I already talked about a little bit. Mars is the instinct and the will. So how we are instinctually, meaning without forethought. We're not consciously thinking about doing these things. We're just doing them like an animal would do, where this part of us is based on living and doing through instinct alone. So how are we instinctually going about fulfilling the unconscious desires of Pluto? And that's what Mars tells us. And like I said before, you have Mars and Pluto on the same energy, so your unconscious and your instincts are matched up to where you might not have a hard time seeing what the subconscious drivers of your life are. Let's see what else. Okay, so we talked about growth through the ego, the sense of self, which is represented by growth from the south node of the moon to the north node of the moon. And then what that does, once you've had your north node activation, as I like to call it, some event or series of events, caused by your life experiences that start to change the way that you see and view yourself, then there's another change and another growth and evolution that takes place simultaneously, and that's through the polar energy of your Pluto. So your Pluto's here, and then we go all the way across the chart to the polar opposite energy, which is Aquarius, 11th house. And this is that. So once you've grown to become more self-reliant and more secure in who you are through having your own sense of power and own sense of ego and identity that's, not dependent on other people, that in turn will help you to become more comfortable in sharing your true authentic self, because Aquarius is about self-actualization through authenticity. So with Leo, this whole Leo desire to be seen and recognized for your gifts or yours, how special you are, all these things. In Aquarius, you're sharing, you're sharing who you are. You're able to use your gifts and talents in a way that's socially useful, because Aquarius is the water bearer. It's the energy that takes all these genius, gifts and ideas and uses them to help humanity. And that's how you will grow. As you grow through your moon to your north node, then that in turn will affect this change where it's not so much about my gifts being a way to solely make me feel good about myself or to make me feel solid in my identity, my sense of, self-acceptance and all those types of things. But it'll be more about using the gifts and talents as a way to help other people, because by this time you'll already be so strong and powerful within yourself that there won't be this need attached to your gifts and talents being used as a way to bolster your sense of self, because your sense of self will already be rock solid in the new Taurus energies, and then that way you can share who you truly are with other people and not have to worry about what they think, or what their feedback is, or just whatever type of worries you might have had or experiences you've had in the past. Those are not going to be true for you anymore. Your whole reality is going to shift and change just through this growth and evolution through your emotional body. And then I'm going to send you some reading. So I'm going to send you a PDF, or maybe a couple of PDFs. I have one that's written by Jeffrey Wolf Green, which is the founder of evolutionary astrology, on the Pluto 5th house soul. And there's a lot of good information in there. I would definitely read that. And then I might send you one from another evolutionary astrologer, because Jeff Green can be kind of hard to digest, his style of writing sometimes. And then I'll probably send you my own synopsis of this placement in writing if I have it already printed out. Because there's a lot of things that can happen when you do have Pluto on the 5th. As a child, I'll go over it really briefly here. As a child, you just want your parents' attention so bad, and it can seem like there's never enough attention for you. Because Leo is the sun, it's the shining star, and it needs to be seen. That's its life force. And the Leo child can be very bright, has a shining light, very gregarious, very, very cutesy, very talented. My youngest daughter has the same placement. She has Pluto on the 5th, and I say that she has sunshine power because she has like this sparkle in her eye, and she's always dancing and always saying, "Look at me," and being real cutesy. But so there's that. And then, as the person gets older, they want to be, self-actualizing creatively, because that's another thing that Leo energy is about creative works and actualizing oneself through one's creativity. So they can be, the biggest cheerleader for other people, saying, "Oh, you should really put your work out there, and you should, you're a rock star," and, just being really big fans and proponents of other people's creative pursuits. And, that's a really awesome type of person to have in your life. But, with all things, there's always the potential to kind of overdo it. There's always negative and positive expressions of each energy. So one thing that Jeff Green wrote about is that people who have Pluto on the 5th, there's this sense of creatively self-actualizing is so important to them that they can think that it's just as important to other people. And then they can, be the, what is it called? Like tiger mom, I guess, where, they try to put all their kids in these extracurricular activities, and I guess trying to live vicariously through their kids. If they were blocked in their gifts and talents, they want to see their kids shining. They want their kids to be the little star, not realizing that just because this is important to them doesn't mean that it's that important to their loved ones, because maybe they're carrying a completely different set of energies. Let's see, what else? Now, You have Sun in Sagittarius in the 6th house. I'll just go over this real quick. So you have the Sun here in Sag, which is all, I have Sun in Sag. That's a really fun Sun to have. And the Sun is directly related to that Leo energy. Like I said, the Sun is our creative life force, or how we take all these elements of our life and we use them through creative expression. So somebody who has Sun and Sag, outwardly you're going to see their gifts and talents manifesting creatively through things like spirituality, philosophy, teaching. So these are all things that travel. These are all things that you might be really good at, and that you might be able to turn into some type of career. There's more to it than that. You got to look at the South Node, how the emotional body is, because all those things are going to tie into what the person actually does for a career. And the 6th house is Virgo energy, and Virgo Sun can be very critical, because Virgo is the Virgin. The function is to perfect. It's the perfection of systems. It's about efficiency. And somebody who has this Virgo energy in their Sun could be really good at, noticing the fine print, the fine details, systems, creation, systems management. So if you put those two things together, it could be somebody who creates, this new type of, let's just say, spiritual practice. Or maybe, there's just so many different combinations and things that Virgo Sagittarius Sun could do. One thing that you want to be aware of that you might not be is that a Virgo Sun can be too critical. So, in your mind, everything's about perfection. It's about doing the best that you can do. And because you relate that way to yourself, you relate that way to other people as well. And other people might view you as being too critical or too judgmental of them, which can harm your relationships. So that's something. Now, what else? I think that's all I wanted to say. I didn't talk about the rulers of your nodes. Okay, so the rulers of your nodes give us additional information on how you're going to go about achieving growth through the nodes. So your South Node ruler is Pluto, which is conjunct your South Node. So basically there's no difference between how you're going about, how you are going about your South Node energies in your past life versus what they already were, because it's the exact same energies. But for your North Node, it's different. So your North Node is in Taurus, and then the ruling planet of Taurus is Venus. So for you, the way that you might go about, becoming more self-reliant, more self-contained, finding more power from within yourself is through something that's Sagittarius in nature. So developing your intuition through your spiritual beliefs, through your personal philosophies. And then also in this something with the 6th house, so any type of practices that you have, spiritual practices, through works or service that you do, because Virgo 6th house rules work and service. So these are all possible ways that you're going to go about developing this North Node energy of Taurus and Aquarius. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick recap here. Hopefully this wasn't like too all over the place and confusing, and I have Virgo moon, but I don't have Virgo sun, so I think to Virgo suns a lot of times the way that I communicate and present things can be a little bit all over the place. So if that's the case, I apologize, and that's just the way, that my energies are set up. So let me try to do a quick recap here. Okay. I'm going to erase all this stuff. Okay, so we know that the unconscious desire of your soul is to be seen and recognized for, your creative gifts and talents, or your sense of the special destiny. And then the South Node here, the sense of self. So, you had this desire to be seen and recognized. Now, this was either manifested in a negative or a positive way according to Scorpionic themes. So maybe you were seen and recognized, but as the bad one, or as something negative, or maybe you were seen and recognized as a powerful person, because Scorpio has to do with power and the nature of power, and the ethics and the morality of power as well. And then the 5th house, this is Leo, so maybe it could go either way. It's any energy can be expressed negative or positively, but maybe you were seen as a child in a positive light, and you were very powerful, and maybe you did have great gifts and talents that you've had since you were a kid that you've been sharing with other people. Or it could be that, if the opposite case was true, where you were seen as bad and projected on to be labeled as this bad person, then, your sense of self and your sense of identity as somebody that's unique and special was crushed. And therefore you didn't develop a healthy ego, because Leo 5th house sun is all about ego. Okay, so that was how those two things relate, Pluto and the South Node. And then think about the life experiences that you've had and how they are trying to teach you how to let go of these energies, that you're bringing from your past life of Scorpio and Leo. If you can't recognize what these experiences were, or can't think of ways that you've grown towards your North Node energies to become more like Taurus and Aquarius, then definitely by your 2nd nodal return in 2 years from now at the dates that I gave you, you're going to be able to figure it out, because it's going to be front and center in your life. What else can I say? Okay, and then after your North Node is developed and you've changed your sense of who you are on the inside, then you're going to be able to take any creative, works that you do and be able to figure out how to use them to help other people, versus as a way to only help yourself, and also use them in a, socially integrative and useful and acceptable way, versus it just being one-sided. And you'll also, your sense of who you are creatively and as an individual and a unique person will be super strong and grounded, because the animal of Taurus is the bull. It's very grounded. Taurus has to do with the senses. So anything that has to do with the five senses, touch, taste, smell, sound, Taurus is all about that. So as you grow, you might find that you're becoming more sensory as well. That's another thing to pay attention to that I didn't mention before. Because Scorpio can be very ethereal. It's the energies are so watery, and the boundaries aren't very firm. There's not, it's not an earth energy, so it's not very grounded. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share with you. Read the PDFs that I sent you if you're interested in thinking about the things that I have mentioned. Because the more that you read it, the more it's gonna become reality for you, and the more you're gonna see it. You're gonna see what maybe was subconscious before playing out in your reality and manifesting in your reality. And then if you have any questions about this reading, feel free to message me any questions that you might have, and then I'll do my best to answer those. And yeah, I think that's it. Okay, hopefully this was helpful to you. Take care. Bye.